Hello, Team Easy Dating. What a day and what a life we have for you at this moment. I somehow magically recruited my good friend to come on the YouTube channel. She is in the top 10, according to datingadvice.com, for female experts helping women in midlife. So she is an absolute rock star, and she is here with us. Michelle, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. So happy to be here with you, Mike. And thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we got her. She's here. Woo! Dance party. It's Thursday when we're filming. Dance party. Dance party. Okay, let's go. She's got the coolest topic, and I can't wait to hear what this is because we've never talked about this. I'm pumped. So talk to me. 3 F words keeping Mr. Right away. What is that?
Well, so hopefully we caught your attention with the 3 F words. I promise you, though, Mike, I'm not going to be profane on your YouTube channel. But, ladies, this is a really, really important topic. And it's a serious topic because these 3 F words can literally keep you single and keep your Mr. Right away forever if you don't handle them, if you don't tackle them, if you don't address them. So I want to start with just a little preface, if I can, Mike, before I jump right into the 3 F words. So usually when we think about the obstacles to finding love, we think of things, I know because I was single until I was 43, we think about things like, where are all the guys? Where are the guys in my city, state, or country? Why am I not meeting someone? Why does love come so easily and naturally for other people? Why am I so successful in my job, my career, and other aspects of my life, and yet love seems so elusive? And we're looking for all these reasons out there, and it can be so maddening and so frustrating and even extremely painful for women because we feel like we've got other aspects of our lives going so well and handled, and yet this whole love thing is just not working. And I know because I gave my own little plan a try for many, many years, and it felt like I was hitting my head against the wall. So what I discovered in my own journey is what I'm going to share with you today. And it's really important that you pay attention because, Mike, what I found is these things come up in one way or another for most women at one time or another, and sometimes all 3 of them are in effect at the same time, and they really are true love blockers, and they will keep your Mr. Right away. So, are you curious to know what the 3 Fs are?
You have got me so freaking excited to hear what this is. So come on, give it to me. What are the 3 Fs?
Okay, I'm going to give them to you one at a time, okay?
Fair.
The first F word that keeps love away is fear. Okay? Now, we all have fears in our lives, and there are 2 kinds of fears. There are fears that are based in reality. In fact, there's a book called The Gift of Fear. And fear of actual, real, physical danger or of dangerous situations, that is a gift that we have that. That can help us to keep ourselves safe and prevent us from harmful people or harmful situations. So I always encourage women to stay in tune with kind of that inner guide that is true and right. But here's the big problem. So many of our fears when it comes to love and dating and putting ourselves out there and being vulnerable and opening our hearts and being available to the men out there are based on false evidence. You've heard the definition of fear that says false evidence appearing real. So many of our fears are those kinds of fears. And when those kind of fears are running the show, we are not able to be ready to receive love. We can't even really see, recognize, or allow the right man into our lives because the fear is going to block it. They say, you know, there's a school of thought that says When I say they, I mean there's lots of different individuals that have put this kind of theory out there. There's a school of thought that says fear and love cannot exist in the same person at the same time. So if our emotions, if our feelings, if our brain is being run by fear, we can't let love in. We can't be open to it, because fear is going to block that, because fear is there trying to protect us. So for example, if we have a fear of being rejected, being hurt, a fear of being disappointed again, a fear that we're unlovable, whatever that fear might be, there's going to be defenses built around our heart, and there are going to be thoughts going in our mind that are going to sabotage us really being present, available, open, and ready to receive the right guy. So fear is actually the first F word. Does that make sense?
Wow. You just blew my mind with that. Everyone needs to like go rewind and watch that whole segment again. That was magical. And I don't even want to ask more questions. I just want to like go on to the next F, because you are changing my life right now. This is brilliant. So talk to me. What is the second F?
Okay, the second F I'm going to tell you in 1 second. I do want to say one more thing about fear. I know about fear personally, and so I'm coming from this from a place of compassion. I have experienced real and false fear in my life, and especially in my earlier life, dating as a single woman. Unfortunately, Mike, I made a lot of my decisions from a place of fear. I held on to the wrong guys for too long, or I dated guys that I knew kind of weren't my match because I didn't feel like I could have the person that I really wanted. I saw the world being, I saw things through a prism of scarcity rather than abundance, and that made me feel fearful that there wasn't someone out there for me. So when I say these things, I'm saying them from experience, and I'm saying them from compassion. So if you're hearing this and saying, oh my gosh, these F words are fouling, we'll say fouling up my love life, I just want you to know you're not alone, and I'm coming from compassion, and I want to bring them to your attention because I think it can help you. And so that's why I'm speaking so directly and so boldly about this, because it's so, so important. And I have found one or more of these is in effect at some point in almost every single woman's life. So I feel compelled to share them with you. So now you asked me about the second F. I just wanted to let everybody know that, because I don't want anybody to come away from this feeling like, oh, the 3 Fs are fouling up my love life, and I don't know what to do. So the second F is fantasy. If I were to use this in a slightly different way, but I got to stay with the F theme, so we say fantasy, I might say mantasy with an M, mantasy. Fantasy or mantasy. Now, what does this look like? This is when we choose to believe something other than the truth. So what does this look like? We get caught up in a fantasy when we believe that if this man were actually divorced and was available for me, then he'd be the perfect guy for me. If this man really wanted the same kind of relationship with me, then he would be the perfect guy that I want, then he would be the perfect guy for me. If this man wanted to actually commit and get married, he would be the perfect guy for me. If I love this man enough and he sees how irreplaceable I am in his life, he's going to fall in love with me. So we allow ourselves to believe that if something were to change, this would be the right man, and we kind of stay in there believing that's going to happen. We stay in relationships sometimes for way too long, believing that something or someone, usually the other person, the guy, is going to change in some way that's going to make it possible for us to be in a relationship. I talk to women all the time that are in fantasies. And I was in one of those myself for a period of time. I had this on and off relationship with this man for a decade, and I absolutely loved him. Couldn't imagine that I could love anyone more, but he was in and out of my life When he was in, he showed up in a really significant way, but could never really quite get to that point where he wanted to commit to me. But I believed for a long time that if I loved him enough, if I showed him how amazing I was, if I showed him how irreplaceable I could be in his life, that he would finally see that I was the one for him and that he would want the same thing that I wanted. Well, guess what? Never happened. It was a fantasy. And here's the thing, Mike, when I talk to women, and I know you've had this same experience, you talk to women, they've come out of a relationship that was incredibly painful or difficult or ended badly or didn't go well. And sometimes they're blaming and upset and angry and feeling really betrayed by the man. I'll often ask this question. I'll say, looking back on it now, and I know that hindsight is 20/20, can you see anything along the way that gave you an idea that things might end this way? Well, guess what? In almost every case, they'll say yes. But because they chose to ignore red flags, or they chose to ignore the if-onlys, if only he were not a rageaholic, if only he wasn't an alcoholic, if only he wasn't totally addicted to porn, he would be the perfect guy for me. But the if only was there and remained there. So we allow ourselves to get caught up in fantasy of believing something that something is possible when it's not based in reality, and we can spend months, years even, in relationships that are not based in the truth. So one of the things that can keep your Mr. Right away is being caught up in a fantasy or a mantasy, whatever you want to call it, and not being based in reality or truth. And so many women waste precious months and years of their lives on these kinds of relationships, and it's truly heartbreaking and painful. And so we have to be willing to tell ourselves the truth. We have to be willing to look at the if-onlys and say, that's an if-only, that's not the reality of what actually is. We have to be willing to say, this is who this man is this who I can be in partnership right now? Not if and when he changes, or not if and when the circumstances change. Because otherwise we're setting ourselves up for a very sad, disappointing, even heartbreaking situation. So fantasy is number 2 of the F words.
Oh, I love that. So this fantasy, do you think women subconsciously know they're in possibly toxic relationships, or do they not know?
Not always. I think sometimes we're too close to our own lives to see the forest through the trees. But I do, and if chemistry is in play, if we have really, really significant chemistry, sometimes we can get caught up in something, and that can override our logic, our ability to really think clearly, and it can make us think that we're prematurely in love. So I always say here's 3 more words for you. You have to balance the head, the heart, and the hormones. And if the hormones override the head and the heart, then we sometimes lose that ability to think clearly, and we can prematurely think that we're in love. But here's the thing, Mike. Usually somewhere along the way, we start getting, even if it starts that way, we start getting an inkling that maybe something is not quite working. Sometimes there are really obvious red flags. I had one client say, when I asked that question about looking back on it, can you see that it might have ended this way? She said, well, yeah, there were more red flags than in the Chinese Communist parade, which I thought was pretty hilarious. They're not always that obvious. But if you have that nagging sensation, or if you find yourself thinking those thoughts, oh, he'd be perfect for me if he were only divorced, if he were only wanting marriage, if that's what you want, or if he weren't sleeping with other people, or if he weren't, whatever the case may be. Usually we start getting an inkling somewhere along the way. And yet, especially if there's that physical attraction or whatever, we override that and we get caught up in the fantasy and we don't tell ourselves the truth. So in reality, The fact that the relationship went that way is not just the fault of the man. It's because we were not willing to tell ourselves the truth. We got caught up in a fantasy. And again, I'm saying these things with so much compassion because I did them. I lived them. I experienced them. And I know how painful they can be. And I also know how much precious time of your lifetime these things can take. If you fall into these traps, you can lose months or even years of your life to the wrong relationship.
Wow. Help the viewer out and help me out. How do you diagnose, so everyone always talks about that relationships involve compromise. And, when you do find the person, probably 90% is perfect. And then 10% you've got to compromise a little bit. So how do we diagnose whether we're on fantasy, this isn't right, versus, all right, I need to be accepting of this small compromise? So can you talk about the difference between those two?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And it's not always easy. It certainly isn't always easy because there is compromise required to make a relationship work. There's give and take. But here's the thing that you have to remember, and this helps keep you out of that fantasy realm and helps keep you from doing what I would consider to be unhealthy compromise. I feel like a big tenet of my work, Mike, is for a woman to be really grounded in knowing her own value. What does that mean? That sounds like a nice thing, but what does it really mean? It means that she knows who she is. She knows what her values are. She knows what feels right to her. She has the confidence to say yes to things that feel like a yes to her. She has the confidence to say no to things that don't feel right to her. So usually when we get in the weeds in terms of compromise is when we're saying things that feel a little bit out of congruence with who we really know we are. So for example, for me, if a man is not divorced, let's say he goes online and he's separated, and I know people have different opinions on that, but for me, and I'm a single woman, I want to be with a man that's fully available to be there in a relationship with me. And if he hasn't got the divorce sorted out yet, for whatever the reason, that's a non-starter for me. I can't negotiate there because that's out of congruence with what feels right and good to me. Do you understand this distinction that I'm making? Whereas if it's like he likes sushi, and I'm not a crazy lover of sushi, I mean, I might be willing to go try some of the, lighter sushi dishes. We can compromise on things. But it's like if a woman is being false to what feels right to her, what feels good to her, she's saying yes to things that kind of inside make her feel like that unease. We have that inner guide as women, that whether we call it women's intuition or just our inner guide, then those are usually signs that maybe we're compromising in ways that might not be ultimately beneficial to you as a woman. I'm talking to women out there, not you as a woman, Mike, or to the relationship. Like usually if a woman compromises her values in order to be with a man, she usually loses a part of her self-worth, and ultimately the relationship typically doesn't go the distance either.
So that's interesting. So what it sounds like is if you've documented and you know what your values are, if there's any time where the man is making you compromise the values, boom, that simple, that easy. This is not right. This is not going to be good long-term. Easy peasy, right?
Well, not quite.
Okay.
There's a little nuance to that. So let me give you an example. I mean, yes, there are certain things where, yes, it's a cut and dry thing. Like for me, the example I gave of a man not being divorced, that to me it's a non-starter. And I'll tell you why, because I've had so many clients that have gotten involved over the years. When they've come to me, they've been involved with men that were separated. And a lot of them never really get around to getting divorced for one reason or another. So they're never really fully available. And this woman is always wanting more. She's left with scraps on the table instead of sitting there at the full banquet feast of love, which is what I believe the woman deserves. So that is an example for me in my book, may not be for everybody, but that would be an example that would go against my values. But there is a distinction here, and this is important, so I'm glad you brought this up. So let's say you're dating someone and the guy wants to sleep with you on the first or second date, and that's not according to your values. That doesn't feel like a yes to you. It doesn't feel right to you. It doesn't feel like you'd be honoring yourself as a woman. Okay, that's an example. That doesn't necessarily mean this is a bad guy and you have to reject him right out of the gate. That doesn't mean it's a total non-starter, but it does mean that you might say, you know what, wow, you know what, I'm kind of feeling the chemistry too, and there's like a part of me that might really like to go for that. But what I know about myself is in order for me to feel good and safe in a relationship, I need more time to get to know someone. So I really want to spend more time with you. Can we do that? So you see the difference? Like, that doesn't mean because he asked for that, that means I'm going to outright reject him. It means he's attracted to me, which I think we want as women, right? So don't be so, like, I'm just saying it's not totally cut and dry. There's a nuance to that. Did that make sense? Did that clarify a little bit?
Yeah, I think what was interesting about that example is, so your value is you don't want to have sex until you're ready, which great value. We love that. And his value is I want to have sex as soon as I can. But if he's willing to play by your rules, then you're going to be okay with him. So if he's like, all right, we don't have to have sex yet, and then he's willing to keep dating you and then earn, into your bedroom, then we're fine.
Right.
So it's really, will the guy come to that value is what it sounds like, right?
Well, will he respect that value? Yeah. Does he care about you or respect you enough to, is he just, you'll find out, if he's just looking for a one night stand, he might be gone.
Yeah.
But if he's really interested in getting to know you and sees the potential for a possible relationship, chances are he's going to be willing to stick around. But in either case, you're being true to what feels right and good for you, and you're not compromising yourself in a way where you're going to have regrets or you're likely to feel uneasy or uncomfortable in a way that's likely going to diminish your attraction to him anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. This has been fantastic. We've got one more.
I got to give you the 3 F's, this third F, right?
Yeah. That's where I was headed. Sorry.
Sorry.
This has been fantastic. And now we got to go to the final F. Let's go. What is the final F, Michelle?
I didn't want to leave people hanging with only 2 F's, and I thought you were wrapping up there, so sorry.
No, we finish here. All 3 F's.
Okay, so the third F is falsehoods. So we have fears.
What was that?
Fears, fantasies, and falsehoods.
Oh.
Lies. And these are those thoughts in our head. These are those nagging lies and thoughts in our head telling us things that are not true. So sometimes these are based in past experiences or stories. So you had a bad experience with men, and so now you have a false belief saying, all men are bad, all men are evil, all men are dogs, all men want is sex, some of the kind of things that they might have, or they might be messages about yourself. You're too old, you're too fat, you're not enough this, you're not enough that, the guys you want are not going to want you. These are just falsehoods. And we all have a certain amount of this going on, this mind chatter, right? Sometimes there's some people out there that call this the inner mean girl. It's like that mean, nasty little girl on the playground that was real cliquey with her friend and didn't like you and left you out and said mean, nasty things to you. Your clothes were ugly and your hair was wrong and you didn't live in the right part of town, or whatever the case may be. These are those thoughts and those messages that are going on, kind of this mind chatter. And this can be incredibly powerful because sometimes these things are conscious, sometimes they're more on an unconscious level. So let me give you a really quick example. Worked with a client a couple years back, a lovely lady in her 60s. When she had been in junior high, she asked this guy to a Sadie Hawkins dance, right? This is like the girl's choice dance. And she really liked him, and she really put herself out there to ask him, and he said no. So she got a message in her mind way back then that all men would reject her. She formed a belief in her mind that was still with her when I started working with her in her 60s. And we identified that that's where that message came from. And even when she wasn't consciously thinking it, it was in her subconscious mind, and she was believing it. So what I'm telling you is we have to be really aware of what our stories are, what stories we've formed around our experiences. So she had this one experience in junior high. She had formed a belief and a story around it that was still with her in her 60s, right? We have to be careful about what stories we've formed around our experiences, what messages we are going on, what messages are going on in our head, and what messages we allow to stay in our minds and in our head. We have to pay attention to what's coming out to the surface. And here's what I suggest, Mike, because I think a lot of us have this stuff going on, right? Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We all have stories.
Yeah, and we have mind chatter going on. And sometimes even when you're on a date, you can't even be present because the mind chatter is, you know, do I look fat in this? Is my hair right? Is he attracted to me? Blah, blah, blah. We have this mind chatter or this critical voice going on. So here's what I suggest. If the critical voice is coming forward, let's just say a thought comes up that says, you're too old to find love. You missed your chance. Let's just say that's the message that comes up. Because I know we have maybe women of all different ages listening, and even women that are relatively young sometimes think that. I mean, I know I thought I'd missed my chance when I was, you know, like 25, right? So let's just say that's the message that's coming up. So what I recommend is you don't necessarily want to argue with it, because there's a reason that message is coming up. The reason that message is coming up is because there's a part of you that's trying to protect you from being hurt or disappointed or having something unpleasant happen to you. So you kind of want to honor that side of yourself. That is a part of you. That's a part of you that thought represents a part of you. So what I recommend, this voice is already talking to you. You may as well talk back. So here's what you say to the voice. You say to the voice, well, thank you very much for sharing. I appreciate that you want to keep me safe. I want you to know, though, that I've grown and I've learned, and I believe that I can protect myself, and that I have the skills now to successfully navigate a relationship with a man. And I believe that because of my experience and because of my age, I'm now even more prepared for the right man than I might have been when I was younger. So since you, little voice, have been working so hard for so long, what I'd like to invite you to do now is just to take a long extended vacation trip around the world, relax, and don't hurry back anytime soon. And thank you very much for caring about me, but I don't need your services right now. So in other words, you don't fight with it, you don't argue with it, you just send it off on its way. You release it and you move forward with confidence and power. And if you don't allow these thoughts, these false thoughts, and falsehoods and fears are all kind of tied in together, but if you don't allow those to prevail in your mind, you're gonna be so much more able, ready, and open to receive love. And it's going to allow you to invite Mr. Right in, because you'll be able to see him, because you won't be so caught up in what's going on in here and what's possible for you. So the 3 F's, if you can conquer the 3 F's, this is kind of the internal stuff. Then the external stuff starts really opening up. Because here's the thing, Mike, our clients can be doing everything right online, in person, dating, or seemingly doing everything right. But if the 3 F's are in effect underneath the surface, guess what? That stuff is not going to work. So that's why I feel so passionate about the 3 F's and how important it is for women to know about these, because they can foul up your love life and keep Mr. Right away. But You have power. You are strong, and empower yourself to have awareness around these, and then you can begin to move through them. And I tell you this because I had to do this in order to open up the possibility for me to meet and attract my husband. I had to become aware of the 3 F's in my own life and address them. Not that they don't ever come up anymore, not that I don't ever have fears, but they don't run the show anymore. They're not running the show. And I don't want them to run your show either.
Whoa. Man. That mind is blown. That was one of the best interviews I've had in years, maybe ever. I learned a lot. So thank you, Michelle. That was incredible. And I'm so glad I got to listen to this. Now, since you're so phenomenal, I want people to be able to interact with you more. And I'm sure everyone's dying to have more interaction with you. So I know you have an amazing free gift. And guys, what I'm going to do is if you click the info down there, there'll be a link. So you just got to click it and then boom, more Michelle. But Michelle, what is this amazing free gift you're giving to everyone?
Yeah, so this free gift is kind of like loosely tied to this. So along with not knowing what's going on inside of your mind, heart, along with being aware of your inner stuff, what I'm sharing with you is 10 secrets every woman needs to know about men. So you can kind of learn more about what's going on inside of the minds and hearts of men. And why I love this free gift, it's an audio and it's an ebook. And why I love this free gift is I think that it helps women to really understand some things about men that will tremendously increase your appreciation for them and your ability to interact with them successfully and form a wonderful relationship with your right guy. It can make a huge difference in your life, and I think you're really, really going to love this. So be sure and click on the link below, because I would love to share this with you, and I think you'll love the insights you get into the hearts and minds of men from this as well. And I want to mention, Mike, this is not just stuff I made up. This is from me interviewing, as you know, because you've been on my man panels, dozens and dozens and dozens of men over the last few years. And some of the key things that men have shared with me, sometimes confidentially, meaning, you know, not on camera, shared in our one-on-one conversations, that have been so insightful and so important that I wanted to share them with women out there. So some really key themes about men that I think you'll really appreciate.
Woo, there it is. That sounds awesome. So guys, get your hands on that. That's fantastic. Michelle, thank you so much for being here. Phenomenal interview. Everyone, Team Easy Dating, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit share. I know you guys want to share this one because you have a lot of girlfriends that probably need to hear this. And even people that are just kicking butt, it doesn't hurt to kind of reinforce that they're kicking butt and they've got their 3Fs rocking and rolling. And so it doesn't hurt to know that you're doing everything right either. So anyway, thank you guys. We will see you next time. Bye, Michelle.
Bye-bye.